The U.S. presidential election is always a spectacle. As night fell, the streets flashed with massive billboards. The television studio lights were brighter than daylight, and people gathered in bars, their eyes glued to the scrolling numbers on the big screen. It was a night where anticipation was distilled to the extreme. For most citizens, it was a democratic feast. For Mark and his team in the operations room, it was the moment the results of an algorithm-driven experiment were due. In New York's Times Square, tens of thousands of people gathered beneath the giant screen. The screen alternately played campaign videos for the two presidential candidates, then switched to state-by-state voting data. Whenever the numbers updated, the crowd erupted in cheers or sighs like a massive tide. The urgent voice of the commentator blared from the street speakers. Currently, Granson's consensus index remains at 67.8, with a clear advantage expanding. His supporters waved flags and chanted slogans as if victory were already secured. Yet the real battle was not on the street, but behind countless unseen screens. Mark sat at the center of the operations room, the three main screens before him displaying the real-time voting progress and emotional curves of the swing states. His gaze was locked on a red area, Pennsylvania. This was the key to victory. Daytime simulations showed enormous uncertainty here. Any sudden event could change the outcome. Mark's assistant handed him the latest data. A Portland TV station was broadcasting a sex scandal linked to Granson, which was rapidly spreading on social platforms. The emotional analysis model showed a slight tremor in the local consensus index. It was a nearly invisible crack, but Mark immediately smelled danger. He decisively ordered Activate Disruption Package to pivot the topic. Minutes later, a news story about a Hollywood celebrity's extramarital affair suddenly dominated the social media trending list. Shares, comments, and reaction memes poured in like a storm, and topics related to the sex scandal were rapidly pushed down. The emotional curve in Oregon stabilized. The only sounds in the operations room were the tapping of keyboards and the flickering of screens. Mark glanced at the clock. The hands had just passed 9 o'clock. He knew the night had just begun. By 8 p.m., as multiple key states announced their results, Granson's vote share steadily climbed. In the operations room, Mark remained calm. He knew this was not history's choice but the inevitable result of their meticulous manipulation. For him, victory was not the objective, but the validation of the experiment's results. Granson's win was merely the first achievement in the algorithm's political dominance. Around midnight, the data showed the election outcome was virtually certain. Major television networks rushed to announce Granson had locked in the victory, their screen banners flashing in vibrant red and gold. President Granson wins the election, accompanied by music and fireworks. The entire nation erupted in fervor at this moment. Tens of thousands of Granson supporters gathered in front of the Capitol building in Washington, D.C., holding glow sticks and flags like an audience awaiting a star's entrance. The stage was set, the lights piercing the night sky. Minutes earlier, there had only been noise and anticipation. But when the numbers on the big screen were announced as the final result, the emotion instantly escalated to frenzy. The crowd chanted Granson's name, slogans rising and falling, their sound drowning out the distant church bells. When Granson stepped onto the stage with a resolute stride, the entire venue burst into deafening cheers. Lights and fireworks intertwined. He spread his arms as if to embrace the whole country. His first sentence, just as his consultants had planned: "Tonight, this is not my victory, but the victory of the American people. Your choice has made America great again." The audience below was teary and applause thundered. But Mark's gaze looked past the screens, seemingly watching a grander historical drama unfold. He understood that this victory was only his first move. Once proven that the algorithm could determine the birth of a president, it would then determine laws, wars, and even the trajectory of civilization. Granson continued his speech on stage. He thanked the voters, his family, and his team. finally shouting, "This is America's most brilliant night. I will make America great again." The audience erupted in fresh cheers. However, amidst the applause and fireworks there were still faint noises. A few independent journalists questioned on social platforms. Why was the complete algorithm for the consensus index never made public? Why did certain topics unfavorable to grandson always disappear so quickly? But their posts were rapidly deleted. The night deepened in Washington. The excited crowds gradually dispersed, leaving behind confetti and flags on the streets. The city after the celebration looked like it had survived a disaster. Litter everywhere. Grandson left the scene in his motorcade, with sporadic cheers outside the window. He closed his eyes, a smile playing on his lips. But deep down a hint of unease lingered. Did this victory truly belong to him? Or to that invisible force? The next morning, the news of President Granson's victory spread across the world at light speed. The Financial Times in London carried extensive coverage of Granson's win. The headline was "A Miracle of Public Opinion Shaped by Technology." Morning programs in Tokyo invited experts to discuss whether the consensus index represents a new future for democracy. In Berlin, street billboards even played clips of Granson's speech, as if this were a global celebration. The reaction of the capital markets was even more immediate. At the opening of Wall Street, the stock prices of several companies related to Granson's policy expectations soared. Analysts wrote in their reports, "The consensus index proves the predictability of politics, which will bring new stability to the market." Investors were steeped in joy, as if democracy and the market had finally found their perfect convergence point. In university classrooms, professors began to cite Granson's victory as a case study. They told students, "This is the mark of big data politics reaching maturity." Students excitedly discussed how algorithms were changing society, and many even took this as their dream, aspiring to work in data companies.